There are pains that shape the human being from the inside out. Some burn like the red-hot iron of discipline. Others corrode slowly, like the regret that settles in when time can no longer be recovered. Carl Jung said that what we leave unconscious governs our lives. We call it destiny. And perhaps that is precisely the difference between those who create their own path and those who are merely dragged along by it. The degree of awareness with which they decide to transform pain into direction. Because the pain of effort has meaning, purifies, builds. But the pain of regret is empty, born from what was not done, from what was postponed, from I'll see later. It is the shadow of potential that never lived. Imagine yourself on the edge between, on one side, the discomfort of growth, on the other, the numbness of stagnation. Jung taught us that every choice made in the present is a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious self. Nothing is neutral. Every decision carries the seed of what you will be tomorrow. Therefore, when you don't choose, something inside you chooses for you, and almost always, it chooses fear. Life takes care of mirroring this hesitation in external circumstances, projects that don't begin, opportunities that fall apart, people who drift away, as if the world itself were responding to your inner indecision. But there's a secret that separates those who only dream from those who truly turn dreams into data. A deadline is not simply a measure. It is a symbol of commitment, an invocation of the real. While the dream remains suspended in the air, the mind treats it as fiction. The moment it gains a number, a boundary, a mark on the calendar, the unconscious awakens. It understands that something has been summoned. The deadline becomes the sacred container where the invisible begins to shape. Jung would call this a symbolic acted gesture that unites the internal with the external, the spiritual with the concrete. Perhaps that's why so many people fail, not for lack of talent, but for lack of action. They want, they desire, they plan, but they don't set boundaries. They don't define where the path begins and ends. And what has no limits dissolves, like pouring water into a desert without channels. It's lost. A goal without a deadline, dream without a body. Beautiful to imagine, possible to touch. Jung said that the psyche needs contours, needs an image, needs a container. Deadline is exactly that, the vessel that contains the chaos of desire and converts it into direction. Think for a moment about your biggest goal. Does it have a deadline? Or does it still exist in the realm of vague intentions? One day I'll do it, when it works out, maybe next. As long as one day exists, your unconscious will interpret it as a childish wish, not as a command. The brain needs limits to activate what modern science calls the reticular system, the ability to focus, prioritize, and react intensely. Jung would see this same process as the summoning of a dormant psychic function, the moment when desire ceases to be just energy and becomes directed will. From the moment you write down a goal with a deadline, by December, I will achieve this result, something invisible begins. It's as if time ceases to be infinite and becomes real. The inner clock awakens and each day takes on a different meaning. A slight sense of urgency arises, living pressure that reorganizes them. What was a distraction loses importance. What was once an option is now a necessity. This is not just productivity. It's deep psychology and act. The deadline awakens the instinct for achievement because it confronts the ego with the limit, and it is at the limit that consciousness grows. Jung said that man only becomes whole when he confronts his own limits, realizes that time is finite, life demands form. A goal with a deadline, a reflection, a respect for time. It's a silent contract between your current self and the self you want to become. Writing down a goal is, therefore, a spiritual act. It's as if you're saying to the universe, I am ready to live up to what I did. It's not the paper or the calendar that matters, but the decision to publicly commit to your own evolution. With each deadline met, something strengthens within you. It's not just self-esteem, it's ontological confidence, the feeling that life responds when you take on the role of author. Jung said that true faith is not blind belief, but the intimate certainty of being aligned with the profound meaning of existence. Achieving a goal is a ritual that reinforces this faith. It's proof that the inner and outer worlds are in dialogue. Each small victory is a sign that the bridge between them is working. And there's a curious phenomenon. The closer the deadline gets, the clearer the perception becomes. You start noticing opportunities that previously went unnoticed. Ideas emerge at random moments. Coincidences multiply. Jung called this ... synchronicity, events that are not causally linked, but align meaningfully when you are in coherence with your purpose. The deadline acts as a symbolic magnet that organizes reality around your intention. However, there is also the opposite risk, that of choosing impossible deadlines driven by impulses of greed. Jung warned about the danger of ... ego inflation, that moment when a person confuses desire with omnipotence. An unrealistic deadline doesn't awaken the unconscious, it paralyzes it. The mind perceives the lie and refuses to obey. The result is discouragement, procrastination, and guilt. The right deadline, therefore, is one that challenges but doesn't destroy. It's the exact point where tension generates energy, not despair. When the time frame is balanced, the unconscious responds vigorously. It begins to send signals, images, dreams, intuitions. It's as if the self, the organizing center of the psyche, moves in its direction. Jung described this process as the transcendent function, the living bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. New is born from the tension. A deadline creates this tension because it unites desire, the future, with reality, the present. It is the line that compels the soul to leave the realm of ideas and step onto the ground of time. And perhaps that's what truly differentiates those who achieve from those who only dream. The former have accepted the pain of limitations. They understand that time is the most merciless and, at the same time, the most generous master. That the clock is not an enemy, but a mirror. It only returns what you give to it. Those who respect time awaken the self. Those who waste it feed the shadow. Think about it. Every deadline you consciously set is a small inner revelation. It's the psyche telling itself it wants to mature. It's the soul creating form visible. When you write down a goal and treat it as something real, you're not just planning. You're practicing magic in the purest sense of the term, the art of transforming thought into magic. Jung would say it's the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. And yet, a question persists, echoing in the back of the mind. What happens after the deadline is set? What keeps the fire burning when the initial enthusiasm fades and routine tries to swallow the promise? The clock may start ticking. Time, by itself, doesn't move anyone. It only marks the moment. What truly moves, the symbolic force that inhabits it. And this force has an ancient name, present in every human soul: desire. The moment the deadline is written, the field is drawn. The map is before you, but it lacks the breath that will bring it to life. Because a plan, however perfect, is merely structure without, and the energy that awakens it comes from the deepest place in the psyche. Jung said the divine spark resides, the creative impulse, the instinct for achievement, the archetypal fire that connects us to the meaning of existence. It is this flame that we need to learn to awaken, control, and direct. That belongs to the next step. Because before lighting the fire, you need to prepare the ground. That ground begins here, at the exact moment you decide to no longer let your... Writing a date is telling the universe that you no longer want life to carry you, but that you are ready to steer it. It is the first conscious act of the energy, the beginning of alchemy, the instant when time ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. And then the inevitable question arises, what is the date of your awakening? There comes a moment when the dream, once just an idea, begins to breathe, gains shape, weight, density. It is when the human being moves from wanting to acting. Jung said that no symbol is static, lives, pulsates, and ends expression. The same happens with the objective, which ceases to be a desire and transforms into a direction. After a goal is given a deadline, demands structure. What was once a distant point on the horizon now approaches and demands a path. The deadline calls for organization. This organization is what Jung would call symbolic engineering, the external construction, an internal model. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of stone. He knows that within that shapeless mass lies a hidden figure, but to liberate it, he needs to act with method, rhythm, respect for the material. Life is similar when you define a goal. Block is time, and the chisel is planning. Without a plan, energy is dispersed. And when energy is dispersed, the conscious takes over again. That's why so many people start something with enthusiasm and abandon it halfway through. It's not a lack of will, lack of a map. The unconscious detests emptiness. If you don't fill it with direction, it will fill it with distractions. Once, a student of Jung asked what to do when he felt his mind was lost, not knowing where to begin. Jung replied that the first step is to give form to chaos. Writing, drawing, sketching. Any gesture that organizes energy is a healing gesture. If you define a goal, opening a business, moving to a new city, achieving health, completing a project, leave it hanging in the air, the chaos remains. But if you break it down into parts, you create a sequence, an action plan, something magical happens. Psyche begins to operate. The mind understands that there is a possible path. Unconscious begins to send ideas, images, and coincidences that strengthen it. This isn't superstition, it's depth psychology. When you organize your steps, you create a field of meaning, and the unconscious responds to this field signals. This is what Jung called synchronicity. External events that seem like coincidences, but which in fact reflect an internal alignment. You decide to open a new business. Same day you receive a message from someone offering the ideas. You plan to study and find a book exactly on the topic you needed. Reality adjusts when the intention is clear. The world responds to the mind that organizes itself. But there's a secret that almost no one understands. The plan isn't just about controlling time, it's about engaging with it. Dividing the objective into stages is transforming the future into something that can be touched today. It's translating the distant into, it's bringing the invisible into the physical realm. That's how the dream descends from the clouds and enters. And routine, although it may seem banal, is the altar where destiny is molded. Jung said that the sacred manifests itself in the ordinary. Doing the same act every day consciously is what transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Here's a simple example. A woman decides to change her health. She doesn't just say, I want to be healthy. She finds it. I want to lose 5 kilos in 3 months. That's the first indication. Then she breaks down the goal. Meals, schedules, exercise, sleep. And then, every morning, she fulfills what she promised. At first it seems mechanical. After a few days, something new emerges, a kind of silent energy, a growing clarity. It's not just the body that the psyche that reorganizes itself around her. The unconscious perceives that there is coherence. The person begins to attract situations that reinforce this transformation. They find people who encourage them, feel less tempted to give up, and realize that small daily victories generate a deep pleasure, more lasting than the path. Always linear. Sometimes, after a period of progress, fatigue, discouragement, and the feeling that nothing has changed set in. It's at this point that many give up, and it's precisely at this point that something essential is about. Jung said that when the conscious mind is exhausted, the unconscious begins to act. It's the moment of crossing over, when inner forces test whether you truly want what you say you want. The obstacles are, in fact, disguised questions. Are you ready to let go of who you were? Are you willing to sustain the commitment even without applause? Will you continue when the enthusiasm dies? These questions don't come from outside. They come from the self, the deepest instance of the soul, which observes whether the purpose is authentic. If the plan is true, you resist. And something changes. Discouragement gives way to silent determination. You no longer depend on emotion, depend on meaning. This is where structure becomes strength. Habit becomes temple. Discipline, which once seemed like punishment, reveals itself as freedom. Because when you organize your time, it bends to you. Chaos loses power. The simple act of crossing an item off the list, of completing a task, of following the plan, is a victory over the scattered unconscious. It is the soul saying, I command the energy that dwells within me. Jung believed that every disciplined act is a form of prayer. And perhaps that's why the greatest results come with consistency. The plan creates a bridge between dream and reality, and this bridge needs daily maintenance. Even when there is no visible result, process is working silently. It's like the seed under the ground, invisible but alive. The unconscious works in the dark, preparing for flowering, and it is in this invisible time that most give up because they confuse silence with failure. Jung once told the story of a man who, after years of inertia, finally decided to pursue a purpose. He created a plan. 3 months later, nothing seemed to change. Discouraged, he went to the therapist's office and asked if he should give up. Jung looked at him and said, "You planted a tree. Now you want shade. Wait for the unconscious to take its time. It works silently, but it never stops working." A few weeks later, that man's life began to change in subtle detail. New people, unexpected opportunities, a clarity that hadn't existed before. The plan had worked, but time needed to be respected. This is the paradox of practical life. Planning is necessary, but control is impossible. The plan is the map, not the territory. Therefore, true planning is not rigidity, dance. You write down goals, but you learn to listen to the signs. You adjust the path according to the terrain. And each adjustment is a conversation with the unconscious. With each adaptation, you discover something about yourself, about the fear that held you, the pride that restrained you, or the desire that had not yet matured. The plan, when used well, is not a prison, it's a mirror. And there's a hidden beauty in this journey. When you set deadlines, structure your path, time, which once seemed like an enemy, becomes an ally. It begins to conspire in your favor. With each day lived with intention, part of you awake. You realize you're not just performing tasks, practicing the art of aligning the external world with the internal one. And then something extraordinary happens. A sense of urgency transforms into a sense of purpose. The clock ceases to be a threat and becomes a reminder of presence. But the story doesn't end there. Because even with the plan defined, with time on our side and the routine functioning, there's a fire that needs to be burning. Without it, the whole structure becomes cold, mechanical, sterile. That fire, not superficial desire, but the kind that is born from the center of being, that burns without destroying, that moves without violence. It's the force that Jung called libido, the creative energy of the psyche, capable of building civilizations or destroying them. And perhaps this is the most mysterious point of all. The plan organizes, but it is desire that gives life. It is the impulse that transforms the script into experience, the will into action, the symbol into reality. Desire, fire, that makes discipline. It is what separates the task from the sacrifice, the effort from the inspiration. It is the fuel of the soul in search of its own awakening. In the next step of this journey, it will be this fire that needs awakened, purified, and directed. Because without it, the plan is just a dead drawing. With it, each line gains warmth and each date becomes a living promise. And perhaps, when this fire ignites, you will realize that it was never just about goals, but about the transformation. Desire is the spark that makes time, and whoever learns to ignite it, learns to create destiny. There is an invisible force that moves humankind, and when it awakens, nothing can stop it. Carl Jung called it libido, not in the vulgar sense of the term, but as the vital energy that propels the soul to realize what does not yet. This force is desire in its purest state, the will to manifest what sleeps in the unconscious. It is what transforms an idea into action, a plan into reality. But, like all power, desire is ambiguous. It can elevate or imprison, illuminate or consume. The difference lies in the consciousness with which it is used. When desire is born from the ego, it is an impatient flame that burns what it touches. When it is born from the self, it is a sacred fire that purifies the path. Jung observed that most people fear their own desires. They repress them, rationalize them, call them impossible. And in doing so, they consign them to the shadow. Repressed desire doesn't die, it merely changes form. It becomes boredom, anxiety, self-sabotage, or that diffuse feeling of emptiness even when everything seems right. The unconscious cannot tolerate stagnant energy. If you don't use it to create, it will use you to manifest itself away. This is why many feel an inexplicable urge to change their lives, even when nothing seems to be lacking. Desire is the call of the self asking for expression. But there's something curious. The more you ignore this calling, the more it pursues you. It infiltrates your dreams, your coincidences, the people who appear with the same message in different forms. It's the unconscious knocking at the door, reminding you that there's something within you that wants to be born. And when you finally listen, the world begins to move. Improbable situations occur, doors open, and a strange certainty takes hold. You are in the right flow. But the price is high. Following your true desire requires abandoning everything that is false. What if what you call stability is, in fact, prison? What if comfort isn't a sign of balance, but of disguised fear? How many times have you silenced the legitimate desire to grow because you confused peace with stagnation? The burning desire Jung speaks of is not blind passion, is clarity ablaze. It is when the will to accomplish something is so profound that you don't control it. You are controlled by it, but in a sacred way. It is what makes the artist paint even without recognition, the inventor test 1,000 times until they get it right, the healer work in silence out of love for what they heal. They're not driven by ambition, but by a fire that burns from within, as if an invisible part of the universe were pushing them towards the inevitable. It is at this point that desire becomes destiny. Jung saw this in all great creators. Thomas Edison, for example, wasn't just trying to invent a light bulb. He was trying to materialize an inner vision, image that haunted him. With each failure, he didn't feel defeat. He said he wasn't failing, he was just discovering paths that didn't work. This is the behavior of someone who lives with a burning desire from inside out. Mistakes don't derail them, they only educate them. Failure ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. The same thing happens in our small daily battles. The professional who dreams of starting a business but fears the uncertainty. The person who wants to change cities, careers, lives, but sabotages themselves at the last. All these stories have the same core, a struggle between desire and fear. Fear is the gatekeeper. It asks, are you sure you're ready to lose who you were? And it is this question that separates the dreamer from the achiever. Because burning desire demands sacrifice, a sacrifice of the old self. What if what you fear losing is precisely what's preventing you from transforming? What if fear is simply the inverted mirror of desire, showing just how much it matters? How many times have you called what was actually disguised cowardice prudence? Desire is also the greatest teacher of patience. Test your ability to sustain a flame for long periods without letting it go out. Initial enthusiasm is easy. Maintaining the fire when the wind blows against it is difficult. Jung said that the soul needs to be continually warmed. Otherwise, the coldness of rationality takes over. It is on quiet days, without applause, that desire shows its true power. It doesn't need an audience. It needs loyalty. When you nurture the right desire, something within you begins to align. Psychic energy focuses, distractions lose their power, and the body obeys the mind as if it knew the way. It's not magic, it's congruence. The unconscious stops fighting against you because it understands that the purpose is authentic. It's as if each cell receives a silent order. We are going there. And everything within you begins to conspire in your favor. A desire, when not guided by conscience, can become destructive. It is like a fire that without direction consumes its own house. Jung warned that power without integration transforms into possession. When desire is fueled by envy, fear, or vanity, it does not liberate slaves. Therefore, the first step is to ask, where does what I want come from? If the impulse comes from comparison, it is a disguised shadow. If it comes from love, it is creation. True desire is not born from, but from the fullness that seeks to express itself. What if what you desire isn't something to conquer, but something that desires you in turn? What if the dream that haunts you is actually a reminder of what you were meant? What if, deep down, your purpose already exists, just waiting for you to accept it? There are moments in life when true desire reveals itself as you don't invent it. You recognize it. It brings a strange sense of familiarity, as if you had forgotten it somewhere far away. It is the self calling you back home. And when that call is heard, there is no going back to the old. The old version of yourself becomes unbearable. You feel an almost physical urge to act, create, to move. It is the birth of true will. This is the point where the journey ceases to be merely psychological and spiritual. Burning desire is the link between the human and the divine within us. It is the fire that transforms the lead of apathy into gold of consciousness. It is the spark that ignites the path of individuation, process of becoming whole. Therefore, desire should not be feared or repressed, but understood and guided. When you learn to direct this fire, you discover that there is no greater obstacle than doubt, no greater force than the certainty of being in harmony with your own destiny. And when the fire burns steadily, reality begins to respond. Coincidences intensify, opportunities appear at the right moment. Life seems guided by an invisible intelligence. Jung called this living synchronicity, the dialogue between the soul and the world. Desire, when true, creates bridges. It doesn't ask permission, it simply happens. And in that instant, life ceases to be an effort and flow. But for a fire to continue burning, air, direction, and purpose. And that's where the conscious mind must take on its role. It must nourish the desire with images, words, and rituals that keep it alive. It's the beginning of the conversation with the unconscious, the moment when the will begins to dialogue with the symbol. It is here that the power of autosuggestion emerges, not as a technique, but as communion with one's own spirit. Because in the end, every great achievement is born from a fire that has learned to listen to its own sound. And that sound, when it is finally recognized, becomes music. The burning desire is not the cry of the ego wanting. It is the song of the soul, remembering who it is. And when you hear it, you understand that life is not a race to conquer what is, but a journey to manifest what already exists within you, just waiting for the courage to. There comes a moment when thought ceases to be a voice and transforms into reality. Carl Jung believed that every word spoken to oneself has the power to shape the inner world. Inner world, sooner or later, shapes the outer world. It's as if each mental phrase were an invisible command sent to the unconscious, a seed planted in the fertile soil of the psyche. Most people talk to themselves all the time without realizing it. They repeat themselves like breathing. I can't, I don't have time, this is too difficult. And the unconscious, obedient, simply responds, yes, that's true. The result is predictable. The mind creates what it believes. Jung called this symbolic programming, the act of converting thought into destiny. Ancient mystics already knew that speech has weight, but Jung gave this power a psychological explanation. He said that the unconscious does not distinguish between fact and imagination. It reacts to everything it receives as if it were. Therefore, when a person repeats negative phrases, they are reinforcing neural pathways of limitation. It's like tracing trails in the field of the mind. The further one walks on them, the deeper they become. But the same happens with positive phrases, constructive images, declarations of power. The difference is that these trails lead upward, towards consciousness. Language is the first instrument of human transformation, and when used consciously, spell-like effect. There are curious experiments that confirm this. Neuroscience studies have shown that people who repeat positive affirmations linked to concrete goals activate the same brain regions involved in real experiences of success. This means that the brain, exposed to repetition and emotion, accepts the new pattern as truth. In other words, it reorganizes itself. Jung would call this symbolic plasticity, the mind's ability to rewrite its own narrative through words laden with intention. The problem is that almost no one does this deliberately. Most live in a trance, repeating thoughts inherited from parents, schools, and collective fear. It's like living within a cultural hypnosis without knowing it. But there are those who awaken, people who have learned to use words as codes and codes as bridges. There's the story of an athlete who, after an injury that kept him away from competitions for months, began to repeat every day, "My body is strong, my recovery is perfect." He said this not out of denial. He recorded the phrase and listened to it before going to sleep. 3 months later, he returned to training and his tests showed regeneration far exceeding expectations. Medicine explained it as coincidence, but Jung would have called it synchronicity. Convergence of internal and external factors when the mind and body align around the same symbol. Another case involved a woman who worked in a job she hated, but didn't have the courage to change. Every morning she wrote on a piece of paper, "I am free to create my reality." Kept the paper in her purse, even without fully believing. One day she was fired. At first she felt despair. Then she realized that somehow the universe had simply responded to what she had been doing. Without realizing, she had prepared the ground for the liberation that fear had prevented from happening. Months later, she opened a small design studio, and whenever she told the story, she would say, "Life listened to me when I finally started talking to myself." These examples are not mystical, they are psychological. The unconscious is literal. It doesn't understand irony, sarcasm, doubt. It understands repetition, and everything said with feeling becomes a hypnotic suggestion. Jung said that human beings live surrounded by symbols, but the greatest of all is within them, the word. Each phrase is an invocation. Therefore, when someone states, "I am incapable," they are pronouncing a sentence. And when they declare, "I am capable," they are opening the way for the unconscious to construct the corresponding reality. There's a simple yet powerful experiment. If you wake up and say aloud, "Today will be a good day," your brain activates neural networks linked to positive anticipation. This increases dopamine, and unconsciously, you begin to act as if the day will actually be better. Small actions change, people react differently, and the prophecy comes true. Not because the universe obeyed, but because you began to project a coherent vibration. The external responds to the internal. Jung said that the world is a mirror of the soul. Whoever changes inside transforms the surrounding scenery. There's an essential detail that you realize. Repeating words without emotion is like trying to light a fire with wet. It requires warmth, involvement, commitment. Emotion is the energy that makes the suggestion penetrate the unconscious. The difference between an empty affirmation and a powerful one lies in the feeling that accompanies it. Therefore, when using autosuggestion, not enough to say it. It's necessary to feel it. Close your eyes and imagine what you want as if it were already real. See the colors, smell the scents, hear the sounds. The body reacts, and the unconscious accepts. It's a silent ritual, a conversation between the ego and the self. Jung once wrote that imagination is the eye of the soul. He believed that visualizing something clearly was more effective than anxiously. The subconscious works with images, not words. When you mentally see the life you desire, you're giving the unconscious the map it needs to follow. This is why people who vividly imagine their goal are more likely to achieve it. They are not daydreaming. They are programming the unconscious to recognize corresponding opportunities. It is a form of psychic engineering that modern science is only now beginning to understand. A curious finding comes from studies done with musicians, athletes. When they mentally rehearse their movements with total concentration, they activate almost the same areas of the brain that would be activated in real practice. This proves that the mind does not distinguish between rehearsal and execution. Thus, whoever repeats an action internally is literally training the body to perform it. Jung would see this as confirmation of his theory. Imagined thought is the prototype of the act. But what if, instead of conscious thoughts, what repeats in your mind are criticisms, fears, and inherited phrases? How many of these voices are truly your own? How many belong to teachers, parents, bosses, partners, people who projected their own limitations onto you? And what happens when you decide to replace them, not through denial, through conscious choice? What changes when you start saying "I can" until your body believes? There is something profoundly liberating in this process. The moment you realize you are the narrator and not just a character in your story. The instant you understand that each thought is a command, and that you can change it whenever you want. This is the true mental alchemy that Jung spoke of, the power to transform the lead of automatic thought into the gold of directed consciousness. There are also improbable cases, those that seem to touch the impossible. A man in deep depression wrote the phrase, "I accept myself completely as every day for 3 At first I hated exercise, thought it was foolish, useless, but I continued. Gradually the words began to come to life. I felt subtle changes, first in his body, then in 6 months he described himself as a different person. What happened? He created a new symbol of identity, and unconscious, obedient to the new image, began to reconstruct it. The same principle can be applied to any area of life. An entrepreneur who says daily, "My work generates value and prosperity," begins to perceive opportunities they didn't see before. A mother who affirms, "My children grow in balance and love," creates a field of security around them. This isn't magic. It's focus. The unconscious filters millions of pieces of information per second, but only delivers to the conscious mind what it considers relevant. When you define what you want through words and emotions, you are programming this filter. It is at this point that life shifts its axis. The mind ceases to be noised and becomes an instrument. You begin to realize that reality is not something fixed, but with each repetition, each mental image, each coherent emotion, the world adjusts. There is nothing supernatural about this. There is only the understanding that the mind is creative and that the word is the first act of. Jung said that the man who masters his words masters his world. Because in the end, what we call destiny is merely the sum of the phrases we believe. The unconscious is the silent scribe that records everything we repeat. And one day, when life's script seems to surprise us, it simply returns what was written. And perhaps the most impressive thing of all is realizing that just one new sentence is enough to rewrite an entire story. A simple change in narrative, spoken truthfully, can initiate an internal revolution capable of altering the course of an entire existence. Because when a human being learns to speak to themselves consciously, they are not merely repeating words, they are calling the future by name. There comes a point in the journey when a human being realizes that, however strong they may be, they cannot go very far alone. Carl Jung said that no mind is complete in itself. It needs others to expand. This is why the true encounter between people is so powerful. When two consciousnesses unite with the same purpose, a third invisible force is created, a kind of energy field. Ideas, emotions, intuitions circulate at an accelerated pace. He called this the shared psychic field. And it is within this field that the greatest creations, healings, and transformations are born. Imagine a moment in your life when someone believed in you, even before you believed in you. Remember how you felt when a simple word of support rekindled a fire that seemed extinguished. Another person's energy can activate something dormant within us. Jung observed that in human contact, a symbolic exchange occurs. The unconscious of one communicates with the unconscious of another, even if the words say otherwise. It's as if, for an instant, two souls recognize each other. When this type of connection happens within a purposeful group, the result is exponential, but the opposite is also true. When you surround yourself with negative, cynical, or unmotivated people, something inside you begins to withdraw. It's as if your light adjusts so as not to disturb others. Jung said that every environment carries a collective unconscious, a symbolic field that influences everyone who participates in it. Being surrounded by doubting minds is like living in a dense fog. The path exists, but you can't see it. Conversely, being among people with the energy of achievement is like turning on 1,000 light bulbs. The difference lies not only in the group, but in the reflection it activates within you. There are stories that impressively illustrate this power. In 1903, when the Wright brothers were trying to prove that man could fly, the whole world called them crazy. The press ignored their attempts, engineers laughed at the prototypes, and investors scorned them. However, there was a perfect synergy between them. When one doubted, the other believed. When one failed, the other redesigned. It was as if they shared an invisible vision that didn't need explaining. This union created such a strong psychic field that the impossible materialized. When the first flight took place, it was not just a technical victory, but a symbolic one, the victory of shared belief over collective. What if the same principle is at work in your own life, in a more silent way? What if the people around you, without realizing it, are shaping what you do, in fact, makes up your mental field? Jung warned that the circle you choose is an extension of your conscious. Therefore, choosing the right people is a way of choosing your own destiny. Prolonged coexistence, kind of psychic contagion. You absorb patterns, gestures, phrases, and even limitations. Sometimes when you say, "I am like this," you are actually repeating the reflection of another. Therefore, it is vital to build your own circle of energy, a group of minds aligned with growth, creation, meaning. It doesn't need to be large, it just needs to be genuine. 3 people committed to a purpose are stronger than 100 passive spectators. Jung saw this union as a modern form of alchemy. In alchemy, 2 seemingly different elements merge to create something new. In human relationships, the same thing happens. The exchange between consciousnesses produces a third element, the idea, the insight, the discovery. This is the true power of a conscious group. In it, each one functions as a mirror and fuel for the other. And when one falls, the field lifts them up, not out of pity, out of harmony. But not all encounters are rosy. Sometimes, life places us before people who seem to drain our energy, making us doubt ourselves. Jung saw this as the manifestation of the shadow unresolved aspects reject or receive from others. When you feel repulsion, envy, or irritation for no apparent reason, it's a sign that something within you is mirrored. The reaction, an invitation to awareness. The shadow of others can reveal parts of yourself that still need to be integrated. This is why relationships are the greatest teachers. The other person always shows you what you don't yet want to see. There's a curious story about this. Once, a young patient sought out Jung, saying that everyone betrayed him. Friendships, relationships, work colleagues, in all of them, there was a pattern of deception. Jung listened in silence and then asked, "What in you do you still believe deserves to be betrayed?" The young man became irritated, denied it, and only after weeks did he understand what the analyst meant. He himself betrayed his promises, his schedules, his goals. The world merely reflected the loyalty he had own commitment. This revelation changed his life. He realized that, by becoming whole, he began to attract people with the same level of integrity. What if what you call bad luck in relationships is simply a reflection of your relationship with yourself? What if the field you live in is reproducing the energy you emit without you? What would happen if, starting today, you decided to be the kind of person you would like to attract? There is an inescapable truth. The world responds to the pattern of your frequency, and that frequency is determined by your thoughts, words, and company. When you change your circle of influence, both internal and external, the field around you reorganizes itself. Different people appear, opportunities arise, old ideas take on new forms. Jung described this process as symbolic resonance. What vibrates in harmony attracts what vibrates in dissonance. What vibrates in dissonance dissolves. This law isn't moral, energetic. If you surround yourself with people who vibrate fear, sooner or later, you'll start acting out of fear. If you surround yourself with those who believe, the unconscious expands. What was improbable becomes possible. What seems distant begins to draw closer. But this requires a choice. Because to make room for new alliances, you need to move away from old patterns. That's where the conflict begins. Part of you wants to move forward. Part wants to stay. That's where growth hurts. What if the price of your progress is leaving behind those who still don't want to emerge from the darkness? What if moving forward means facing temporary loneliness before finding the new circle? Are you willing to pay that price? Jung said that individuation, process of becoming who you are, requires courage to endure the isolation that precedes rebirth. There is a passage in his notes where he writes, "He who seeks the light must first accept the fire." The fire, in this case, is purification, loss, discomfort, the rupture necessary. The same applies to relationship decisions. Sometimes, the life you want requires letting go of the life. There is a reward. After the fire comes the gold. When you connect with people who are also awakened, something inexplicable happens. The results multiply. Time seems to yield more. Coincidences increase. The collective energy creates a thrust that propels everyone forward. It's as if the universe recognizes the union of purposes and accelerates the path. Jung saw in this the confirmation of his theory. When two or more consciousnesses unite around a greater symbol, a superior intelligence acts through them. And it is at this point that tension transforms into revelation. Because the true power of a group lies not in the support it offers, but in the clarity it awakens. Surrounding yourself with the right people is not a social act, it is a spiritual act. It is recognizing that each mind is a piece of the same mosaic, and that its brilliance depends on the light. When this perception matures, solitude ceases to be fear and becomes a conscious choice. You understand that you can walk alone without being alone, because the energy of the circle remains with you, even at a distance. It is this invisible force that will sustain you in the next and final stage. The moment when all ideas, desires, and alliances will need to be transformed into concrete action. Because consciousness without movement is a dream, and the next step of the journey will not be about thinking, but about acting with faith, determination, courage to cross the boundary that separates the ideal from the real. There comes a point when every theory needs to touch the ground. When ideas cease to be mere concepts and begin to pulsate like something alive. Carl Jung said that knowledge only becomes wisdom when experienced. It is at this point that the inner path meets the real world, a point where you stop studying your own soul and everything revealed so far, deadline, plan, the burning desire, power of words, and the strength of the group, is not a manual for thinking differently, but an invitation to act differently. It is the silent call of consciousness to leave the dream and enter creation. Jung believed that human beings are born twice. The first time, come into the world. Second, when they awaken to who they truly are. This second life doesn't begin with a grand event. Small, intimate choice. It's the moment you decide to no longer live on autopilot. When you recognize that everything you seek outside is, in fact, a reminder of what has always been within. What seemed distant, success, love, purpose, clarity, begins to draw closer when you shift your perspective. The external world is a reflection of the internal world. The mirror of life always reflects back what you hold in thought, word, and deed. But transformation is not an instantaneous act. The process of refinement. Jung saw the unconscious as a gold mine, dark, deep, and full of treasures hidden beneath fear. Every challenge, every loss, and every doubt are tools the universe uses to unearth who you are. Suffering, when understood, ceases to be punishment, a moment when the soul is invited. What seemed like an obstacle reveals itself as a portal. Therefore, instead of resisting what hurts, ask yourself, what is this situation trying to teach me? What part of me still needs to mature? The answer that comes will be the first step towards healing. Life doesn't transform when everything goes wrong. It transforms when you decide to maintain your purpose even when everything seems to go wrong. Jung said that the unconscious manifests itself in two ways, through symbols or symptoms. If you ignore the symbol, the inner calling, the sign, the intuition, returns in the form of symptoms: anxiety, apathy, discouragement, fear. The soul speaks one way or another. Listening to it is an act of courage. It's saying, I trust the intelligence that created me. When that trust is established, something changes in the structure of existence. Chaos organizes it. Unexpected cease, brighten, and the practical application begins. Simply take a piece of paper and write down what you truly want to experience. Not what others expect, what your soul desires. Give it a date, an outline, form. Divide it into steps, like building a bridge. Then write a sentence that summarizes the something direct, positive, in the present tense, as if it were already true. Repeat this sentence aloud every morning with emotion and presence. Visualize the scene unfolding. Feel your body react, and then act. Do something concrete every day, even something small, that brings you closer to that vision. Action is the signal the unconscious is waiting for to move the invisible piece. Without it, nothing materializes. Jung observed that the mind needs action to believe. When you act, even without certainty, something within you realizes. It's as if the universe only trusts those who demonstrate faith through movement. Don't wait to be ready to begin. No awakened human being has ever started with certainty. They began with a flash of courage and a heart full of doubt. Confidence came later, as a consequence of practice. With each step, fear loses its power. With each attempt, the impossible draws closer. The soul learns by doing. Another simple exercise is to observe the words you use daily. Slowly eliminate expressions that diminish your power, such as, I can't, it's difficult, I'm not good at this. Replace them with neutral and constructive affirmation, without exaggeration or lies. Learning, I am improving, I am capable of solving this. Words change vibration, and vibration changes circumstances. If you want to see faster transformation, start with language. It is the code of the unconscious. Create your own circle of energy people who believe in growth, who talk about ideas, not problems. Seek out those who inspire you, who awaken the best in you, who don't fear your light. And if you don't yet have this circle, become the first to form it. Be the person who spreads enthusiasm, who listens without judgment, who supports instead of criticizing. When this energy comes from you, it inevitably returns multiplied. The law is simple. What you offer, you receive. What you deny, you block. Generosity is an invisible investment with the greatest return that exists. But none of this will make sense if you don't learn to manage your time. Time is the temple where everything happens. Organize your day consciously. Set priorities. Eliminate distractions. Respect the silence. Learn to stop. Mind needs pauses to integrate what it learns. Jung said that the soul speaks when the noise ceases. It is in the intervals between one task and another that intuitions are. Therefore, don't fill all the spaces with noise. Emptiness is fertile. Silence, cool. Celebrate every small step forward. The brain records emotion, not perfection. Celebration reinforces learning and creates motivation for the next step. Joy is spiritual fuel. Don't wait for a big event to feel filled. Happiness isn't in the final result, but in the awareness of being in motion. You are already a winner every time you choose to continue. And in the end, Jung's lesson resonates as a simple and powerful truth. What you seek also seeks you. When desire is pure and action is consistent, life rearranges itself to meet you along the way. The universe doesn't reward those who merely desire, but those who decide to act even without guarantees. And it is in this leap between intention and gesture that the magic happens. It is there that the invisible becomes palpable. It is there that the mind reconciles with the soul and man becomes once again the creator of it. If this video reached you, perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it's the reminder you needed to start now. Tomorrow, there's time. But today, the only moment that truly exists. Write down your goal. Ignite your inner fire. Use your words as bridges, and surround yourself with those who believe in you. Life is too short to be lived in waiting. Destiny isn't a place you go. It's something you build step by step, thought by. If this content resonated with you, please like it. Write in the comments what you felt, even anonymously, and share it with someone who needs this boost. And above all, Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and transformation. Your story doesn't end, it only begins. The clock is already ticking, and time more than ever is ready to walk beside you.